come back, and then they get distracted, and then they get diverted, then they do something else, and they get very little done. Remember, there's a one-to-one relationship between what you produce, your outputs, and what you get paid, and how good you feel about yourself. So prepare everything before you begin. Now, the seventh key is have time management tools. Now, there are specific time management tools that everybody needs to have. The first time management tool is what is called a master list. Now, you can create a master list just by buying a spiral notebook. You buy a spiral notebook, and every single thing you can ever think to write, you write down in that spiral notebook, and you keep this as a catch-all system so that when you have other time, you take it out of the master list and you delegate it to specific days. The second thing that you need is a calendar. You need to be able to organize your time. And the third thing you need tied into the calendar and the master list is a daily list. Now, your daily list is actually your blueprint for the day. Your daily list is what tells you what you're going to do from the beginning of the day to the end of the day. And your daily list is tied into your goals, to your major priorities, and is what you do your A, B, C, D, E's and your 80-20s on. So a daily list is the foundation or the blueprint for your productivity during the course of the day. Now, here's the rule with regard to the daily list. First of all, never work without a daily list. Second of all, prepare your daily list the night before so that your subconscious can work on it the night before, during the night while you're asleep. Now, the eighth key here is the 45-file system. So you'll never forget anything again. The 45-file system says get yourself 45 hanging files. Hanging files have 31 files, which equal days of the month. They have another 12 files, which equal months of the year, and there is another 2 files, which equal years. This equals a total of 45 files. Then what you do is you have something coming up in a few months. Very simple. You simply stick it into that month. When that month comes, you take it and you divide it up into days. If it's 2 years ahead, you divide it into years, and you'll never forget another task. Now, number 9. Key to success is work nonstop. Once you get started, work nonstop. Put your head down and say, I will work now, and put your head down and keep on working until you get it done. You can set yourself, as we say, little rewards. Give yourself a reward for completing the task. Train yourself like a Pavlovian dog, and avoid the tendency, by the way, to fall into what is called Parkinson's law, where that work expands to fill the time allotted for it. You concentrate on getting the work done in a smaller period of time rather than allowing the work to expand like an accordion to fill the time that you have necessary. Number 10 key to planning and organizing. Remember that planning saves 4 minutes for every 1 minute that you spend in planning. Very often people will say, well, I don't have time to plan. I really don't have the time to plan because I'm so busy. What we have found is that it's very hard to spend more than 10 or 12 minutes a day planning in advance, making out a list, organizing the list by priority, and organizing your workplace. But for every minute that you invest in planning, you'll save 4 in execution. Sometimes you'll save 10 or 20 or 30, but what this means is that you can get a 400% to 500% return on energy, return on your energy invested by planning. Number 11, use a organized filing system. Now, here's an interesting point. Many filing systems are so poor that it takes the average executive in the average company 30% of their time looking for lost files. 30% of the time in the average organization is spent looking for misplaced items that have been lost somewhere. So what you need is a filing system, and the simplest of all is an alphabetical, an ABC type of system, where every file is listed alphabetically, and second to that, you need a Rolodex. If you're at home, you need the same little system. You can buy a Rolodex in any stationery store, and what this does, it shows you alphabetically where each file is. So therefore, when you create a file, you create a card in your Rolodex that tells you where you can find the file. The basic rule is the rule of 5. It says that you should be able to retrieve any file in your office, any piece of paper, within 5 minutes, or you are suffering from malorganization. Number 12 is what is called prime time. Now, one of the keys to planning and organizing is prime time, and there's 2 types. There's both internal prime time and there's external prime time. Internal prime time is when you are at your best. Organize the most important things that you have to do in the course of a day when you feel the best, usually in the morning. But some people are best in the afternoon, some people are best in the evening. Some people work at the very best first thing in the morning at 5 or 6 a.m. So what is your internal prime time? where you are the most productive. Second of all, ask what is the external prime time. This is where your customers, where your boss, where your staff are most accessible and available. If you're in sales, your external prime time is when you can see your customers. If you are in any particular profession where your customers are accustomed to seeing you at a certain time, this is your external prime time that you need to plan and organize your life around. But see if you can't coordinate both your internal and your external prime time. Number 13 idea is what is called your to-do list. Now, we talked about the daily list, and this is just a slight expansion on it, but what it says is this, is that people who work from lists are 25% more productive than people who do not work from lists. Never do anything without writing it down on your to-do list. If you're going to go shopping, make a list. If you're going to go to the office, make a list. The most productive time managers in America are inveterate list makers. Make it to the point where people make fun of you, but always be working from a to-do list. Never start work, even on your action file or anything else, without making a list first, organizing the list, and starting on the most important item in the list. Number 14 idea is what is called the 30% rule. The 30% rule is always allow yourself 30% more time than you expect for any task. You'll find that very productive people are not people who are in a panic or working very hard. They are people who have allowed themselves enough time to do the job and to do it right. Never plan your appointments back to back, one after another. Estimate how much time it will take you and then give yourself 30% more. You'll be amazed at how much more productive you are. Number 15, remember this, is that planning reduces stress. One of the greatest problems that we have in the workplace today is stress, and the primary reason is because we feel out of control of our work and out of control of our environment. Remember, the very best way to get yourself into control is to plan and organize your work in advance. The most effective and productive people are those who have the very best plans and are working the plans. And finally, number 18, remember this, practice makes perfect. Practice makes perfect. That even if you're not a particularly good planner now, planning is a skill that is very simple. It's sort of like a bicycle. Riding a bicycle or typing with a typewriter, you can make the decision if you desire. Remember the 4 Ds. If you really want it, if you make the decision, if you discipline yourself, and if you're determined enough, you can become absolutely excellent at practice, absolutely excellent at planning and organizing, and you can so dramatically increase your productivity and performance that today you cannot even imagine it. Give it a try. If you really want to be successful, if you really want to go all the way to the top in your profession, then you need to develop the ability to get results. In every single study of high-performing men and women, we find that intense result orientation goes hand in hand with big payoffs in life. You see, it's not how much time you put in or the activities that you engage in or how sincere or how intelligent or competent or capable or anything else. It's only what you produce, the results that you get from the time that you put in, that counts in determining your rewards, not only your psychic rewards, how good you feel about yourself, but your financial rewards. You're always paid in direct proportion to the quality and the quantity of the results that you produce. So let's start off talking about getting things done with point number 1. Point number 1 is that your rewards in life will always equal your results. We call this the law of sowing and reaping, the law of cause and effect, that the cause of everything that happens to you is your ability to get results, and these are your rewards. If you want to increase the quality and quantity of your rewards, you have to think all the time about increasing the quality and quantity of your results. Now, the second point is this, is that most people are very unproductive. Most people could not do a full day's work if their life depended upon it. In fact, every study that I've ever seen suggests that the average person works at only 50% of capacity. In fact, in most work environments, about 30% of all the work time is spent in socializing, gossiping, wasting time, talking, chit-chatting, hanging around the water fountain, reading the newspaper, drinking coffee, and so on. What does it mean to you? It means if the average person is working at 50% or less of capacity, there are tremendous opportunities for you, if you'll do some of the things that we talk about, to rapidly move ahead of other people. Now, the third key, and we talked about it last time, is that the starting point of high productivity, the starting point of getting things done, is the quality of neatness. The quality of neatness means that you start with a clean desk and you end with a clean desk. You start with a clean briefcase and you end with a clean briefcase. You take the time to make sure that your entire working environment looks neat and professional and productive and effective. Remember this, it's not just what you do, but it's the perception of other people of what you do that counts. I read a story by a self-made millionaire who said that he built 5 successful companies, and one of their critical rules was that every single person kept a clean desk. Now, the fourth key in getting things done is the importance of focus. Focus, which leads to clarity. Now, we talk about this over and over again. Focus means that you're absolutely clear about what you're trying to accomplish. Focus means that you're absolutely clear about your key result areas and why you're on the payroll. We say that fuzzy focus leads to fuzzy results. Clear focus leads to clear results. And this means that you take the time to think. You take the time to think through, why am I on the payroll? What have I been hired to accomplish? What are my key result areas? What are my core functions? What are the 20% of the things that I do that account for 80% of my results? And so on. So the starting point in getting things done is focus and clarity. I call this it's like adjusting the camera all the time, so you keep your focus very, very clear. The fifth key to high productivity is concentration. Now, concentration is, in reality, where all the work in time management leads us to. It is the ability to concentrate 100% on one thing, setting priorities, the most important thing, and to stay with that single task until it's finished. Concentration means moving forward in a straight line toward the goals and objectives that you've clearly identified. It means concentrating without diversion or distraction. Focus and concentration. I believe in 25 years of research that the reasons for success and happiness in life are focus and concentration. The reasons for lack of success and unhappiness are lack of focus, lack of concentration. Which brings us to number 6, and that is task completion. Now, what we know about task completion is that not only is it the key to the future, not only is it the key to getting more and greater and better opportunities, but important task completion, doing something that's important to you and carrying it through and finishing it 100% at the end, is a source of energy, enthusiasm, and high self-esteem. Men and women who are working consistently on getting important things done and staying with it till they're complete are more positive, they're more optimistic, they're more self-confident, they have more belief in self-assurance in themselves, and they get more opportunities to complete more tasks. And here's the flip side, is completing low-priority tasks leads to stress. If you work and you get a lot of little things done, but they're not moving you toward the accomplishment of things that are really important to you, what happens is you just feel crummy as a result. So this brings us to number 7. Number 7 is the quality of perseverance. You need to persevere and persist single-mindedly toward the completion of your important task, because we say that the ability to concentrate is a discipline, and perseverance or persistence is self-discipline in action. You see, anybody can start off to do a job, but your ability to keep in there and keep slogging and stay with it and refuse to budge and keep moving is the critical factor of high performance. Principle number 8 in getting things done is remember that the average person, especially executives, pick up an important piece of paper or task as many as 5 times before they actually complete work on the task. What does this mean? It means that if you pick up the task and you focus single-mindedly on that and it's your most important and you concentrate on it till it's complete, you can give yourself a 500% savings in time or increase in productivity. This has been proven in study after study after study that the fastest way to increase your output is to pick up a task and to stay with that task instead of picking it up and coming back and picking it up and coming back and so on. Number 9 is the importance of developing a compulsion to closure. A compulsion to closure is a commitment before you begin that I will stay with this task until it's finished. You will put your head down and you will hammer and hammer and hammer until it's finished. And one of the ways to do this is to train yourself with a series of rewards. What we found over and over again is that really high-performing men and women are those who are capable of establishing a series of rewards for each milestone in the completion of a major task. And what they do is they trigger a conditioned response. Almost like Pavlov's dog, where they fed them a piece of meat and the dog salivated and they rang a bell at the same time. And if they repeated this often enough, pretty soon when they rang the bell, the dog salivated. If you continue to set up a reward structure for yourself for the completion of small and large tasks, you know what happens? Is that you eventually salivate and get excited, motivated, and enthused when you're working on something that's important. Now, number 10 is to develop what is called an affirmation or a mental trick to keep yourself working. And the most powerful of all are the words, back to work. Whenever you find your attention drifting, say to yourself very strongly, back to work, back to work. Somebody comes in and wants to talk to you, you say to that person, I'm sorry, but I have to get back to work. And your boss comes in, you say, boss, I'd like to spend a lot of time talking, but I have to get back to work. Get to be known as the person, little Mr. or Mrs. Back to Work. Because the thing is, when you keep repeating back to work, back to work, back to work, you program those words into your subconscious mind, and they actually activate and push you forward and get you back into the job rather than diverting your attention to doing something that's fun and easy. Now, the 11th key to getting things done is terribly important. It's called chunks of time. Is to do important tasks, especially the important tasks which are not particularly urgent, the tasks that can contribute the very most to your long-term future, you need chunks of unbroken, sustained time. Any decision involving other people requires a lot of time in thought and discussion. Any proposal, any report, learning any critical subject, gathering information requires chunks of time, minimum of 60 to 90-minute chunks of time. Now, successful men and women are those who structure their days so that they get these chunks of time. And in my experience, let me give you 4 ideas that you can use. Number 1 is come in early in the morning, or number 2 is to stay at home early in the morning. Get up at 5 or 6 and work for an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours. Come in early before anybody else. Work at lunchtime. When everybody goes out for lunch, the office becomes quiet, close your door, put your head down, and work. People in my office and people in other offices will often take do not disturb signs and hang them on the wall or hang them on their doors, and what they will say is do not disturb, and they'll take a quiet time of an hour to 2 hours in the morning and perhaps also in the afternoon. The next, probably the 5th chunk of time that you can get is stay after work and work for a couple of hours. Remember, 1 unbroken hour is worth 3 hours in a work environment with interruptions. So if you can break yourself 1-hour chunks here and there, you can dramatically increase your productivity. Number 12, develop the body language of high productivity. What we have found is that there is a certain physiology. In other words, if you sit up straight and erect and strong and clear-eyed and move forward on your chair and sit up to your desk with your back straight, it's very hard not to be productive. But if you lean back, if you slump down, if you put up your feet, you find your whole body relaxing too. So develop and maintain the body language or physiology of high performance. Number 13 key to getting things done is called single handling. Now, single handling is probably one of the most important time management techniques ever developed. It simply says that when you pick up a task, don't pick it up unless you're ready to stay with it and to work on it until it's finished. And once you pick it up, discipline yourself, force yourself to stay at that task and stay at that task and keep at it until the task is done. In fact, the studies show that you will increase your overall output and productivity by 50% the very day that you begin adamantly single-handling every single task. Single-handling comes from several studies. It is the ultimate expression of concentration in work, and it's absolutely outstanding. Number 14 is concentrate on those areas where superior performance will bring outstanding results. Concentrate on those areas where superior performance will bring outstanding results. Concentrate on those areas where you can really make a difference. Ask yourself this question: what can I, and only I, do that if done really well will make an extraordinary contribution? Ask yourself, what can I and only I do that if done really well will make an extraordinary contribution to my work, to my life, to my company, to my health, to my happiness, to my future, to my finances? But always concentrate on the 1 or 2 small areas where if you do a terrific job, it makes a tremendous difference. We say in marketing, fish for whales. If you're in marketing or sales, ask yourself, what customers, if we could get them, what sales, if we could get them, would make an extraordinary difference to the success of our companies. And concentrate on the whales. the areas of greatest opportunity and possibility in your work and personal life. The 15th key is concentration of power. Now, concentration of power is an expression that comes from military terms, and it also comes from time management. It's also called the principle of the mass. And what it says is that you take all of your resources and you put all your resources together and you concentrate them single-mindedly on a single point. In fact, you'll find that every extraordinary achievement in the history of mankind has come about as the result of an individual or group of individuals being able to concentrate their powers into the critical point where that makes all the difference. So concentration of power is a habit of mind. Where and in what way can you concentrate your power to achieve the very most? Number 16 is always concentrate on strengths. According to Peter Drucker's work on effectiveness, one of the top 5 management techniques for effectiveness is to concentrate on strengths rather than on weaknesses. Now, here's an important point, is you have, as an individual, specific strengths and potentials that if you develop them to their full extent, you can accomplish anything you want in life. You also have a lot of weaknesses. People are pits, mountains and valleys. People have a lot of weaknesses where there are things that they can't do particularly well. They also have peaks where there are things that they do extraordinarily well. So your first job is to look at yourself and say, what are my particular strengths? What are the strengths that I have where I can make the most significant contribution to my life? Then you ask, where can I make the most significant contribution to my company? Where can I make the most significant contribution to my family and to my long-term future? Then you say, what are the significant opportunities in my work environment? What are the significant opportunities for increasing revenues and decreasing costs? What are the significant strengths of other people? And how could those people be deployed usefully? There's a basic rule that says that a weakness is merely a strength inappropriately applied. Very often you're applying your strengths inappropriately too. Number 17 is set deadlines on everything that you have to do. Use deadlines as a forcing system. A forcing system is a way to push you from behind and internally to get the job done. And number 18 is to promise others. One of the ways that you can motivate yourself to concentrate single-mindedly on one thing at a time is once you've decided to do an important project and you've decided it's the most important of all projects, then write it down, make a plan for its accomplishment, and then promise the significant people in your life that you will have this job done on time by a certain day. You see, when you promise someone else, it sort of programs you subconsciously and impels you forward and makes you much more likely to concentrate and focus and become intensely result-oriented in everything you do. The more experienced you become in your job and the more effective you become at time management, the more likely it is that you're going to be assigned multitask projects. You're going to be assigned to do things that have a multiple or a variety of tasks involved, and your ability to organize these jobs and to do them well is going to be a critical factor in your success. In fact, a study at Stanford University that studied the qualities and characteristics of men and women who moved up into the upper echelons of management found that the number one most identifiable and measurable quality was the ability to bring together a team of people and to work with that team in cooperation to complete a complex task. And everywhere around you, you'll find that the men and women who are at the top of their fields are those who, in most cases, who have developed the ability to assemble a team, to work as part of a team, and to channel that team's energies and abilities toward completing a task or a project on time. Now, when we talked a little bit earlier, we talked about the importance of time management, about the importance of setting goals, and the importance of setting priorities, and the importance of getting yourself organized and getting things done. Now, this all comes together in the multitask job. Look around you and ask, what are the multitask jobs that you engage in? Even something like planning a party is a multitask job. Producing a newsletter is a multitask job. Making a decision on a new piece of equipment might be a multitask job. So you will find yourself surrounded by multitask jobs, and the importance of your work is determined by the number of multitask jobs you do. One of my favorite lines is the line from the Bible that says, "O good and faithful servant, you have been master over small things, I will make you master over large things." What this means in the world of work is that if you become a master over complex tasks, you're going to have an opportunity to work with much more complex tasks and be paid much more for it. Now, the second key is that planning and organizing skills are the core skills of success in management. The ability to plan and organize your own work, then to plan and organize the work of one more and two more and several other people is absolutely essential to your success. And your ability to plan and organize effectively and well all comes to bear in these complex tasks. So here's how you perform a complex task. Here are the basic rules. Number one, define the ideal results. Define the ideal results. Ask yourself, if we performed this task to distinction, what would the result look like? What would the result accomplish? What would the result achieve? And define the ideal results point of view of the person or persons who have to use what this team produces. If you're producing a product, say, what would our customers say if we produced the perfect product? If you're putting together any kind of a strategy, just always say, what would be the ideal results? And here's the key. Start with the goal and work back. Start with the goal and work back. This has been the key to successful business building and project management for years. Define the goal and work back from the goal to the present time. Well, point number 4 is to set a deadline. Once you've determined exactly what the ideal project will look like, set a deadline and determine the date upon which the project will be complete. One of the things that I suggest, by the way, is build in a fudge factor. If the project is important, and the more important it is that you build in fudge or extra time to provide for unexpected exigencies. Number 5, once you've set a date and a deadline and you define the goal, make a complete list of everything that has to be done, every single activity that has to be completed in order to complete the job. Start with the very last thing that will happen just before the job is done. What's the second to the last thing? What's the third to the last thing? And work all the way back to the present day to work out a complete list of every single activity so that you have a roadmap. When this roadmap is complete, the job will be done in its entirety. Number 6 is ask yourself, what additional information will you require? What is it that you don't know right now? And make getting that information a task. Put it down as a task, as one of the things that has to be done. Also, when you put it down as a task, you will assign a timeline to that task, and you will design your entire project so that getting that piece of information becomes a critical part of it. Number 7 is determine your limiting step. Now, the limiting step concept we talked about a little bit earlier. I want to talk about it again. It's called your choke point. The choke point has one simple definition. It determines the speed at which you get from where you are to where you want to go. So ask yourself, what is the limiting step that determines the speed at which we complete this project? What is the limiting step that determines how fast we get from where we are to where we want to go? What part of the project takes the longest? Very often, the part of the project that takes the longest becomes the determining factor in how long it will take to finish the whole project. So ask yourself, what is our limiting step? And then ask yourself, what can we do to alleviate this limiting step? Is there anything that we can do to speed things up? Very often you will find shortcuts, you will find time-saving devices, you will find established methods and principles and so on, but the limiting step becomes the critical factor, not only in determining the deadline, but in determining how capable and competent you appear to others when it comes time to saying that we'll have this job done by a certain time. You can't go back and say afterwards, well, I didn't know it would take this long because, unfortunately, you just look foolish. All right, number 8. There are 2 ways to organize a multitask project. The first way to organize the project is what is called sequential, the sequential way. Now, the sequential way is when there are several jobs within the multitask project that can be done in order. First one can be done, and then the second can be done, and the third can be done, so that each of them are sequential, but each of them requires that the previous one be done first. For instance, someone has to write something, someone has to edit it, someone has to typeset it, someone has to do layout with it, and so on. So therefore, the writing would come first, then the editing, and then the typesetting, then the layout, and so on. Now, the other way that you can organize a project is parallel. There are many tasks that can be done at the same time. There are many tasks where you can begin working on one part, someone else can begin working on another, and you can work on several tasks on a parallel basis. Let me give you a very simple example of a project management chart. Very important way of thinking. Across the top of every project management chart is time. Now, the time may be days, the time may be weeks, months, years, it doesn't matter. Down the side, you have tasks. Now, these are the things that have to be done. So what you do is you lay them out in a chart like this, and let's say you lay it out over a period of 4 months. And here you have 4 months, and the months are January, February, March, and April. You have worked back and determined that it takes you 4 months to do the job. So here you have completion. Completion is at this point. You then work the task back, and you can find that these are the different things that have to be done over the course of this particular task. When this is done, this can be done at the same time. When this is this way far along, this can begin. These two can work parallel. Some cannot be started until others are done, and so on. But by laying it out like this, suddenly you have a perfect picture of what is necessary to be effective in completing this task. Now, the 10th critical point, once you have this organization chart, is to assign and delegate. Assign and delegate, which means that you bring your team together, and the very best way to do this is through discussion and dialogue, talking about what needs to be done, dividing it up, have people take different parts of the task, but assign every single one of the individual parts of the task that need to be done, and delegate it, and delegate every single one with a deadline. And your deadline is for completion, and your deadline always contains a fudge factor. When you assign and delegate parts of the task, build in what is called a review process. That means time and place where you will check and see how well they're doing. It may be once a week, it may be every Wednesday, it may be every 2 weeks, but a review process is absolutely essential. If the project is worth doing, it's worth reviewing on a regular basis. Number 12, the key to successful project management, and many people say that this is the crux of it, is ask yourself, what could go wrong? What could possibly go wrong? What are all the things that can possibly go wrong? Now, here's where you have to take into consideration Murphy's Laws. There are 5 Murphy's Laws. You're familiar with the first 2. The first of Murphy's Law says that whatever can possibly go wrong will go wrong, and that will be true in a project. The second is that of all the things that can possibly go wrong, the worst possible thing will go wrong. So you ask, what's the worst possible thing that can go wrong here? The third of Murphy's Law is no matter how much time you allocate, it takes longer than you plan. The fourth is no matter how much money you allocate, it costs more than you expected. And the fifth of Murphy's Laws is before you do anything, you have to do something else first. So take those 5 laws into consideration when planning, and never expect to violate the laws, because that will just lead to foolishness and embarrassment. Remember, your success is determined by how well you do these projects. Number 13 is ask yourself, what are all the problems that you're likely to have in the course of putting this program together? Engage in what is called crisis anticipation. Crisis anticipation is something that project leaders and successful executives always do, and they say, what are all the crises or unexpected reverses that could occur, and then have a plan B. A plan B is an alternative plan that you have to fall back on in the likelihood that your worst possible things could possibly happen. Always be ready with a plan B. The most successful men and women alive are those who have already developed an alternative before the rubber hits the road, before the vehicle hits the wall, if you like. Number 14 is use what is called a storyboard. Now, a storyboard is a visual representation of a particular project that was developed by the Walt Disney Corporation, and it's absolutely an outstanding way of increasing your effectiveness. Take a large board. You can use a cork board. You can use a visual board. What I have found is you can now use stick-on notes as part of storyboarding, and take what is called and put a header. And the header is the name of the project. Below the header have subheads, and each of these subheads is a part of the project. You can have as many as you need, but below each of the subheads there is a task, and there's a series of cards underneath here. Now, sometimes these tasks can be in different colors so that they can be assigned to different people. And what you do is you then put pictures up here, and these pictures or these numbers or these tasks can then be moved around. They can be moved around so that you have more under one or you have larger ones under another, but you have a visual picture of how the project goes together. Sometimes you can have a storyboard that shows them in sequence, and these will be timed sequence. These may be months. These may be people. These may be particular project areas. But storyboarding is a very powerful way for everybody to get a visual picture of what you're trying to accomplish and then to contribute ideas to this visual picture. Now the 15th key with regard to project management is the type of problems that are likely to occur. The first problem is expecting everything to go well. Expecting everything to go well and not expecting there to be any problems. And we find that the very best people are the ones who are always aware that they're likely to have difficulties. The 16th is trying to do too much at once. Trying to hurry. Trying to do too much at once because you fall behind. The third key that you have is not allowing enough time to complete the project because you didn't realize it would take that much. Now finally, the last key, and it's one of the most important rules of time management, I call it Tracy's Law. Now Tracy's Law, it's because nobody's ever seen this but me. And Tracy's Law says that the difficulties of performing any task increase with the square of the number of steps in the task. By difficulties, I mean the cost, or the potential cost, the potential problems, and the potential time involved. Let me give you an example. If a person is going to do a single task that is just one step, you are going to pick up the telephone and call. All right, that has a square of 1, which means, let's put this down here, square of 1. This means that the square of 1 is 1. The simplicity of the task is at a level of 1, or what we call the complexity. It's Tracy's Law of complexity. Now, if there are 2 steps to it, then you have 2 steps, but it's 2 steps squared. So now the level of complexity, which means the potential cost, potential problems, and potential time involved, goes to 4. If there are 3 steps involved, 3 steps squared will be 9. So the potential complexity, or the length of time, the potential cost, the potential problems, it doesn't mean that they will all occur. It means that the potential for them goes up with the square of the number of steps. And if you go to 4 steps, and that's squared, it's 16. If you go to 5 steps and that's squared, it's 25. Now, what does this mean? It means that if you can simplify by going from 5 steps to 4, you reduce the complexity from 25 to 16, which is almost 50%. So it's an extraordinary, extraordinary difference. Always, always, always in large projects, simplify, simplify, simplify. Simplification is the hallmark of the superior human being, of the superior executive. Let me just end with this one critical point, and it's this, is that your ability to manage multitask projects is the core skill where the essence of everything that you know and all your abilities come together. Your intelligence, your planning ability, your organizing ability, your personality, your knowledge of your field, everything comes together in managing multitask complex. And the more and the better you do of it, not only the more results you'll get, the more money you make, the happier you'll be, but the more successful you'll be in every single part of your life. We said before that one of Murphy's laws was before you do anything, you have to do something else first. And before you achieve maximum productivity, you have to eliminate the time wasters in your life. The time wasters surround you on all sides and tear away at your minutes and hours and hold you back from producing the critical results that are vital to the success in your career. We've been talking, by the way, about eliminating time wasters from the very beginning. In a way, we've told you about 2 laws. One is called the law of the excluded alternative, which says that whenever you do one thing, you cannot simultaneously do another. So if you start to work on something that's more important to you, you cannot work on things that are less important. There's another law. It's called the law of forced efficiency. And again, it says when you have a burning desire to produce or perform in a particular area, and you focus all of your time, attention, and energy in that area, that alone will cause you to avoid and ignore and get away from the critical time wasters. So what we started with were the starting points of great success. And the first is clarity. 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 What are you trying to do? How are you trying to do it? What are you trying to do? How are you trying to do it? Clarity is the number one word in time management, and it runs through everything you do. And it leads us to not only clarity with regard to goals and objectives, but it leads us to clarity with regard to priorities, the 80-20 rule. What are the 20% of the things that you do that account for 80% of your results? And the more you can focus single-mindedly on those, the more likely it is that you're going to be able to avoid the time wasters. Now, the second key to avoiding time wasters is decision. Decision with regard to the areas of concentration. What are the one or two things that you're going to do that make all the difference? You see, you can never do everything there is to do, so you have to think, and you can only do the one or two things that make all the difference in the world. And that's decision with regard to concentration. And the more clear your decisions and the more you concentrate, the easier it is for you to eliminate time wasters. Point number 3 is that you and I and everybody are surrounded by time wasters. In fact, most people are time wasters. Most people, by their very nature, because they're not as focused as you and I are, have a tendency to waste time. They socialize, they talk, they drink coffee, they drop in, they phone us on the telephone, they have recurring crises, they have problems, they have an excess of meetings and a whole lot of other things. So remember that most people waste time. Your job is to break away from others and be known to the critical people in your business as the person who doesn't waste time. Here's one of the great rules, is when you work, work all the time you work. Work all the time you work. Work all the time you work. This is one of the great rules of life. From the time that you come in, remember, your job is not to read papers, make phone calls, socialize, drop off your laundry, pick up your groceries, or get your dry cleaning done. Your job is to work all the time you work. If you're going to work 8 hours, by gum, you work 8 solid hours and just work, work, work. And I promise you this, everybody that counts knows who the workers are, and everybody knows who the non-workers are. All right, looking at all the studies, we have found that there are several major time wasters in the world of work. And let's take them one at a time. From the most prevalent, we'll talk about the basic 7. The first of the major time wasters is the telephone. The telephone seems to have an insistence with its ringing that causes us to be distracted over and over again. So here are some keys with regard to using the telephone. I'll just give them to you quickly. Key number 1 is have your calls held. Rather than responding to the telephone every time it rings, have your calls held. A second thing is to have your calls screened. If it is not important for you to talk to that person or there's no value to it, don't take the phone call. Don't allow your curiosity to overwhelm you. Number 3 is look upon the telephone as a business tool, not a social tool. You and I are conditioned from infancy, and especially from our teenage years, to think of the telephone as a social tool. We think that's how we communicate with our friends. The fact is that when you get into the business world, it's a business tool, which means get on and off it fast. Make it a business tool. When somebody phones, say, hello, how are you? And if they go into a conversation, say, what can I do for you? How can I help you? And get the conversation straight down to business as fast as possible. Now, here's another thing. When you're phoning somebody else, always have an agenda. Take a couple of seconds to write out what you're going to talk to the person about. And when you call them up, say, I'd like to talk to you about 3 things. And tell them what the agenda is. And when you discuss the 3 things, keep notes. We say the power is on the side of the person with the best notes. So keep notes on the conversation, and when you're finished with them, say, I know you're busy, I'll let you go. When a person is really conversational, likes to talk a lot, say, well, I certainly have enjoyed talking to you, and I know you're busy, so I'll let you go. Nobody's going to say, no, I'm not busy. So therefore, get on and off quickly. And finally, number 5 is batch your calls. So once you have collected all of these calls, return all your calls at the same time. There are very few calls that are so important that you can't put them off till later. Now, the second key source of interruptions is visitors. We'll put the number 4 up here. Number 5 is visitors. Drop-in visitors, people who visit you either inside or outside the company without warning, and there are ways to take care of the visitors. Number 1 way to take care of the visitors, when somebody drops in and says, have you got a minute? What you say is no. And what you do say is very simply this, is say, no, I'm really busy right now. Could I talk to you a little bit later? Just be really polite, but pull the plug on a drop-in visitor as quickly as you possibly can. When somebody comes into your office, here's a quick key. Stand up. If you stand up, it's very hard for another person to sit down. It's Almost impossible, in fact. So you stand up and you say, I'm really under the gun right now. I'm trying to finish a couple of things, and could I talk to you a little bit later? What will happen is the person will stand up for a couple of minutes. They'll be a little bit uncomfortable, and then they'll leave. Now, a second thing that people do is that they put a do not disturb sign on their office on their office handle. They get one from a hotel the next time they're in a hotel, and they put it on the outside so they can get themselves an hour or 2 hours of quiet time during the day. A third thing that you can do is when a visitor comes in is walk the visitor to the door. Say, well, one more thing before you go. And get up and take the visitor and walk them to the door. Something that people often do, by the way, is they say, hey, have I shown you something? And they say, something I wanted to show you. And you get up and you take them by the arm and you take them outside of your office to show them something. And you say, I know you're busy. I'll let you get back to work. I'm in a hurry too, and get back to work. So dealing with the drop-in visitor is absolutely essential. Standing up is one of the great keys. If you stand up quickly when somebody comes in, they're unlikely to stay there for very long. The sixth major source of interruptions is meetings. Now here's a couple of points with regard to meetings. First of all, meetings are absolutely essential in business. They are a business tool. They're an absolutely essential way of sharing information, solving problems, doing joint problem solving, and so on. Also team building. However, an excess of meetings indicates malorganization. What does that mean? It means that nobody is really sure what they're supposed to be doing, and there's probably too many people. So meetings are a great waste of time. The average person spends about 3 to 5 years of their life in meetings, and about 50 to 70% of that time is wasted. So how do you cut down on the amount of time that you waste in meetings? Here's the keys that have been discovered over and over again. First of all, don't go. If you can possibly get out of a meeting, don't go to it. Say, is it necessary for me to be at this meeting? Now, if you're holding a meeting, here's a critical point. Take the number of people who will be attending, multiply their hourly wage by the number of people to work out the cost of that meeting. If you have 10 people who are earning $25 an hour each, you have a meeting that costs $250 an hour. If somebody came to you and said, could I spend $250, what would you say? You'd say, wait a minute, what's the reason for this meeting? What's the purpose? Why are we going to spend $250? And you need to know the purpose of every meeting. So therefore, once you've determined the purpose of the meeting, be sure that you have an agenda. If you are not organizing the meeting, make sure that somebody else who is organizing has an agenda. The fourth thing that you can do to make meetings more effective is to have start and stop time and stay on schedule. If the meeting is supposed to go from 8:30 to 9:30, make sure it goes from 8:30 to 9:30. E, assume the latecomer is not coming. Don't wait for anybody. Just plunge right into the meeting. F is start with the most important items first on the agenda. Start with the most important items and deal with them first, so that if the meeting runs out of time, you've at least covered the major things. G is leave as soon as possible. Ask if your item can be discussed or the thing that's of relevance to you can be discussed, and then when it's over, leave as quickly as possible. And finally, the last is, if you're going to have a meeting, distribute minutes after the meeting so that everybody knows what happens. Distribute minutes and especially get closure on every item before you go on to additional items. Then distribute minutes so that everybody knows what was decided. These are the keys to making meetings effective. The seventh major time waster in the world of work is firefighting. Now, why does firefighting arise? Well, firefighting arises in one case naturally. You can't avoid it. Unexpected crises occur. However, the best way to deal with a crisis is to anticipate it. Now, here's the rule. If the same crisis arises more than once, the reason that has happened is because nobody has thought about how to put into place a policy that deals with it. So the first thing in dealing with a crisis, A, is to stop and think. Before you react, stop and think. Get the facts. Get the facts. Ask questions. What exactly happened? When did it happen? Where did it happen? How did it happen? Get the real facts, not the assumed facts or the apparent facts or the obvious facts, but get the real facts. Get the facts, and the more slowly you go toward thinking through the crisis, the more likely it is that your response to it will be effective. C is delegate wherever possible. If you can delegate resolving the crisis to someone else, by all means do so. Big mistake. If you come up through the ranks, and one of the things you do is you come up as you deal with this type of problem, when you rise to higher positions, you'll have a tendency to fall back into your comfort zone and go back and try to deal with the problem. So firefighting is a natural tendency for us because it's comfort, so delegate. And finally, the last key to delegation is decisiveness. Whatever you do, make a decision. Make a decision and then get on with it. Which brings us to the 8th reason for time wastage in organizations, and it's socializing. And as we said before, the average person spends as much as 30% of their time socializing. The fact is that socializing is a great waste of time, so what you simply ask is this what I've been hired to do? Not only is this what I've been hired to do, would I pay someone else to do what I'm doing? And remember, work all the time you work. Treat the working environment like a business environment and get away from socializing. Save your socializing for after-work activities. Number 9 is indecision. Indecision is almost invariably caused by either ignorance or fear. And one of the things we know about this indecision is that 80% of all decisions should be made now. One question you always have to ask yourself is this a decision that has to be made by me? And if it's not, delegate the decision. If possible, make the decision quickly. And we say that successful people are not necessarily those who make the right decisions, but they make their decisions right. In any case, indecision drags out time more than you can possibly imagine. Number 10 has to do with knowledge workers. The fact of the matter is, today, most of our employees are knowledge workers. Knowledge workers are people whose work is characterized by producing results. They produce results. And it takes a lot of time and a lot of unbroken time to converse with knowledge workers, to help them articulate, to help them think, to dialogue, and so on. So you cannot rush dealing with knowledge workers. Critical point. Number 11, you have to ask yourself, whose time do you waste? Whose time do you waste? Because you are also a time waster for other people. Do you keep people waiting? Do you keep people delayed? Do you come late for meetings? Do you promise things and then not do it? So ask other people, how do I waste your time, and to do everything possible to eliminate it. The 12th form of time wasting is perfectionism, is trying too hard to do the job too well the first time. So ask yourself, how well does a job have to be done? And if you can do it that well, then don't worry about getting it right. Internal memos, things for internal distribution, don't have to be done perfectly every time. Number 13, major time waster, is television. Now, the average adult in America wastes 25% of their time, their discretionary time, watching television. The average adult in America could become rich if all they did was not waste their time on television. Now, the way that you deal with television is to first of all understand that excessive television watching, now not watching a learning program like this on video, but excessive television watching is very hurtful. It causes you to become passive. It turns your mind to porridge. It causes you to become apathetic. It causes you to lose your capacity to think critically. And what it does is it causes you to lose your aggressiveness. So here's the key to television. Cut down by 1/2 hour per week. Chief executive officers of Fortune 500 corporations watch less than 5 hours of television per week. And there's a direct correlation between the number of hours of television you watch and how far down you go on the wage scale. The people who watch the least amount of television and spend the most amount of time reading, learning, communicating, growing, working at their work are the ones who are the most successful. And finally, number 14 is non-goal-oriented activity. The key to eliminating the time wasters and the interrupters is very simple, is do not do anything that does not move you toward the accomplishment of goals that are important to you. Every single time an activity comes up, you have to ask yourself, is this moving me in the direction that I want to go?